Okay, so let's just jump right in. Imagine you're trying to research someone, a historical figure. You go online, you open a couple of tabs. The first source tells you this person was a high-level athlete who, transitioned into this controversial, really high-intensity performance career in the late 90s, won some major awards in her field, and then just vanished, apparently because of a health scare.
Right. Sounds like a pretty standard biography so far. A dramatic arc, a rise and fall, you know?
Exactly. But then you click over to that second tab, and this source tells you that the exact same person is actually like a generic Instagram influencer from Phoenix, Arizona, who owns three beautiful bungalows, love eating Drups biscuits, and is protected by a private security detail of 8 bodyguards.
8.
And they all have their own cars.
That is a very specific and very confusing contradiction.
It is, but that's exactly the situation we're in today. We are looking at a stack of sources that claim to describe the same woman, Halli Aston. But honestly, if you put them side by side, you'd think we were talking about 2 different people. Maybe not even the same species.
It's a perfect case study in what we like to call digital archaeology. Usually when we prep for a deep dive, we're sifting through nuance. Maybe sources disagree on a date or a particular quote, something small.
Yeah.
But here, we're looking at 2 completely alternate realities. We have to hack through a jungle of just, well, absolute nonsense to find the very specific, very human story that's buried under all of it.
Exactly. And the subject is Halli Aston. Depending on which link you click first, she's either that bungalow-owning influencer with the, I guess, paramilitary security team, or she's a legitimate award-winning performer from, the golden age of adult entertainment in the late 90s.
And that disconnect is precisely why this is so interesting. We're not just doing a biography today. I mean, we're going to try to uncover the true life of Halli Aston, of course. But to do that, we have to strip away all the internet fluff, that junk data that clogs up search results, and really look at the reality of what was a brief but incredibly intense career in adult media right at the turn of the millennium.
And trust me, you are going to want to hear the junk data first. It is wildly entertaining in its own kind of broken way. So our mission is clear. Who is the real Halli Aston? And why does an algorithm think she needs 8 bodyguards to protect her biscuits?
I'm still stuck on the biscuits.
Yeah.
But yeah, before we get into it, just a quick note for everyone listening. Because we are analyzing the adult entertainment industry, we'll be touching on some mature themes. We'll be talking about the mechanics of, let's say, intimate performances, the physical realities of that work, and the health risks involved. We're going to keep it professional and totally safe for work, but we are dealing with adult history here.
Absolutely. So let's start with the fluff. I found this source. It's from a site called VIP Actors, and reading it felt like watching a robot try to write a biography after only reading, like, fast food menus.
I know the type. It's a classic content form. It's probably generated by a very confused bot or a scraper algorithm that just fills space between the ads.
It is so bizarre. Okay, so this source claims Halli Aston was born in Phoenix, United States. Spoiler alert, all the reliable sources say that's completely wrong. But it goes on to describe her profession as actress, Instagram star, YouTuber, model.
That's the standard modern celebrity template, right? The algorithm that wrote this has no idea who she is. It just knows that, famous people in the 2020s are Instagram stars. So it just slaps that label on a woman who retired from public life before Instagram was even a thought.
It's lazy history, but it's fascinating to watch the machine try to work. But the writing, just listen to this. It says, the parents were overjoyed at the birth and invited all their relatives to the feast.
The feast? Was she born into, like, a medieval kingdom?
Apparently. And then it says, quote, she celebrates her birthday in a big way, with a capital H on her.
In a big way, that is so remarkably unhelpful.
It gets so much better. You know how biographies usually list family members? This source has this whole section for her parents. It writes this narrative about how her mother liked a boy and married him. But when you look for the actual names, it literally says, Halli Aston's father's name is updated soon.
That's my favorite part. It's a placeholder that actually made it into the final text.
Yeah.
The bot writes entire paragraphs about their emotional states, the joy, the feast, all of it. But the actual names are just updated soon.
It's like it forgot to fill in the blanks before it hit publish, and it does the same thing for her mother. We will update the name of Halli Aston's mother soon. But, despite not knowing her parents' names, it claims to know her financial portfolio in extreme detail.
Oh, yeah.
A net worth of $5 million, 8 vehicles, and this is a direct quote, 03 beautiful bungalows.
Not 3.
03.
Well, 3, presumably in Phoenix, where, again, she wasn't even born. And this is where we get to that security detail you mentioned.
Oh, yes. The source claims Halli Aston has 8 guards. The guards have also been given 1 vehicle each.
See, that's where it just goes from wrong to, like, absurdist fiction. Why would a retired performer from the 90s need a private militia of 8 guards? And why do they each need their own car? Are they, like, patrolling the perimeter of the bungalows?
It makes it sound like she's running a small country, not just living a private life. And the diet stuff is just as weird. It says she likes deep dish pizza, drops biscuits, I assume that's drop biscuits, sausage gravy, hominy grits, and clam chowder.
It feels like the AI just scraped a menu from a Cracker Barrel and pasted it into her bio to make her seem, what, relatable?
But think about the image this creates, right? If you're just a casual browser, you click this link and you get this completely sanitized, completely nonsensical image of a wealthy influencer eating gravy inside a fortress.
And that's the danger of it. It erases the actual human story. It replaces a real person's life, which involved risk and labor and real choices, with a generic, advertiser-friendly template.
So let's delete the template. Let's get rid of the bungalows, fire the 8 bodyguards. What do the real records say? Because we do have some actual biographical data here.
Right. So if we pivot to the factual record, we're looking at a woman born on January 24th, 1977. And not in Phoenix. She's from Fountain Valley, California.
Okay, so a West Coast kid.
Exactly. And we actually have some context on her early life that makes a lot of sense when you look at her later career. She grew up with an older brother and a sister. But the really key detail for me is her athletic background.
Yes. The sources all mention she was a competitive gymnast for 5 years.
And a cheerleader, right up until college.
That gymnastics piece feels so important. We talk a lot about the, the glamour or the taboo of the adult industry, but we rarely talk about the sheer athletics of it.
It is absolutely crucial to understanding her success. I mean, think about what high-level gymnastics requires. Extreme flexibility, obviously, but also incredible body control, spatial awareness, and a really high threshold for physical exertion. You are literally trained to perform incredibly difficult physical tasks while smiling and making it all look effortless.
That's a really good point. We tend to think of these films as just intimacy, but it's a performance. It's choreography, it's hitting your marks, it's holding a pose for the camera.
Exactly. It's stunt work, really. And when we get to her filmography, the gymnastics background isn't just a piece of trivia, it's her core skill set. She entered that industry with a physical capability that most people just do not have.
The source also mentions she's an avid cook.
Which might be the one tiny grain of truth that the content farm bot accidentally picked up when it started listing biscuits and gravy.
So she's in California, she's athletic, she's in her early 20s. How does she get from cheerleading to the adult film industry? Because the timeline here is incredibly tight.
Very tight. We're looking at a career that really only spans from about 1998 to 2000. It starts, as a lot of these stories do, with a personal connection. She was introduced to the industry by a friend of hers who was already a performer, a woman named Heidi Dalton.
The classic friend of a friend network.
Right. And Heidi Dalton introduces Aston to a director named Seymour Butts. Now, for those who don't know the industry history, that name is, well, it's obviously a pun, but he was a pretty significant figure in that era. This was the rise of the gonzo stylist plot, more reality-style up-close camera work.
And he didn't just hire her for a scene, right? He signed her to a contract.
Yes, she signed a 1-year exclusive contract with him.
Can we pause on that for a second? I mean, in mainstream Hollywood, a 1-year contract sounds really short. But in the adult industry back then, that's a big commitment. What does that actually mean for a performer?
It's an investment. The studio is basically saying, we're going to build a brand around you. It guarantees a certain amount of work, a marketing push, box covers, but it's also a quota. You owe them that work. It's a full-time job with a very demanding schedule.
But, and here's where the story takes the turn, she didn't actually finish the year.
No, she didn't. She ended up ending that contract after just 6 months.
Before we get into why she left, because I think that's the most important part of her story, let's look at what she did in those 6 months. Because even though it was a short time, she was working like a machine.
Oh, she was extremely busy. The record shows she appeared in over 40 films.
40 in 6 months.
Over 40. Now, some of those might be compilations that were released later, but the bulk of that filming happened in that very short window. Mostly 98 to 99 if you do the math. Assuming she worked for roughly 26 weeks, that's almost 2 full productions a week.
That sounds absolutely exhausting for any job, let alone one that involves such extreme physical performance.
It's a grueling schedule. You have to remember, this isn't a quick 20-minute shoot. These are 10, 12-hour days on set. Hair, makeup, waiting, performing, retakes. And physically, it just takes a massive toll on your body.
And these weren't just some obscure clips either. She was making waves right away. Her very first scene was in a film called Tushy Heaven.
Which, despite the title, was a really significant debut. She was performing with Tom Byron, who's a legend in the industry. And the sources are very specific here. This debut involved a highly demanding physical performance. It notes that for this very first scene, she engaged in a specific category of intimacy, let's just call it backdoor intimacy, for the first time ever on camera.
Wow. Talk about a trial by fire. Your first day on the job and you're doing something that intense. That feels like being a rookie pitcher and getting thrown into the World Series for your first game.
It really speaks to the pressure of the industry at the time. You didn't always get to ease into it. But it also speaks to her performance ability, which was probably helped by that gymnastics training we talked about. She wasn't just showing up, she was executing really advanced choreography from day one.
And the industry recognized that, didn't they? She actually won an award for that specific movie.
She did.
Yeah.
In 1999, she won the AVN Award, which is basically the Oscars of adult entertainment for Best Group Sex Scene in a Video for Tushy Heaven. So right out of the gate, she's an award winner.
She was also nominated again a bit later for a film called The Cult.
That's right. Best Couple Sex Scene nominee in 2001. So clearly she had the talent. She had that star power in her niche. She was working with top people, winning awards, filming constantly. By every metric, she was a rocket ship. She should have been the next huge superstar for a decade.
But then she just stops. And this is where the digital archaeology gets really serious. The fluff source tells us she's living in bungalows. The real source says she quit her contract halfway through because of something much, much darker.
This is the reality check. The sources cite two main reasons for her ending that contract. The first one connects directly back to what we were saying about gymnastics, the amount of physical work required.
Which goes back to that number over 40 films in just a few months.
Burnout is real. We're talking about deep physical exhaustion. Even for a former competitive athlete, the body can only take so much. But the second reason is the one that really stops you in your tracks.
Yeah. The sources mention an HIV scare.
And we really need to pause and contextualize this. This is 1998, 1999. The industry protocols around testing and safety were evolving, but they weren't nearly what they are today. There wasn't the kind of instantaneous universal tracking system that you see now.
So the risk was real. It wasn't some abstract thing.
There's a constant shadow hanging over every single performer. An HIV scare doesn't necessarily mean she contracted the virus. The source is careful to call it a scare. But it usually implies a false positive test, or maybe a scene partner tested positive later, or a rumor started circulating about a set she'd been on.
I can't imagine the psychological weight of that. You're, 21 or 22 years old? You're successful, you're winning awards, you're making good money, but suddenly you're just waiting on a test result that could determine if you have a life-altering, incurable virus.
It changes everything. It turns the glamour of winning an award into a life or death gamble. And it seems that for Halli Aston, that scare was the wake-up call. She realized that no amount of fame or money was worth that specific kind of risk.
It really paints a picture of how precarious that life was. You could be an award winner one day and just terrified for your health the very next.
And that's the kind of nuance the internet often misses. We see the photos or the video clips, but we don't see the anxiety of waiting for test results. We don't see the physical pain after a 12-hour shoot.
So she leaves the contract, which sounds like a very rational, very mature decision. She prioritized her life over the industry. But the content kept coming out, right? The source mentions compilations released in 2004.
That's standard practice, the zombie career, as it's sometimes called. Once you film that footage, the studio owns it forever. So even though she stopped filming around 2000, studios were repackaging her scenes into best-of collections for years.
Which has to confuse the timeline for fans, I'm sure. It looks like she's still active, but she's actually long gone.
Precisely. In fact, that AVN nomination for The Cult came in 2001. She had likely already left the business by the time her name was even read out as a nominee.
So she was being celebrated by a room full of people she had already walked away from.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting. If you look at the dates, she was really only Halli Aston the performer for maybe 18 months tops. But that tiny little window generated enough content and enough fame that we're still talking about it. And content farms are still writing fake biographies about her 25 years later.
That's the power of that medium. It freezes you in time. To the internet, she is permanently that 22-year-old performer. But in reality, she lived a whole life before. The gymnast from Fountain Valley. And she's lived a whole life since, presumably enjoying that passion for cooking, maybe raising a family, living a totally normal private life.
While the internet insists she has 8 bodyguards and eats drop biscuits in Phoenix.
Right. The disparity is just wild.
So what does this all mean? We started with a mission to find the real Halli Aston. And I think we found a story that's so much more human than the search results suggested.
I think the big takeaway for me is the value of truth over comfort. The internet fluff version, the bungalow owner, it's safe, it's advertiser-friendly, it fits neatly into a modern social media feed. But it's just a lie.
It's a hallucination.
Exactly. The real story is grittier. It involves the adult industry, it involves health scares, it involves physical exhaustion. But it's also a story of agency. It's a story about a young woman who entered a very tough business, conquered it physically, won its top honors, and then made a really hard decision to prioritize her own health and just get out.
It's a story about boundaries, really. She pushed them, found where they were for her, and then she drew a line in the sand.
And that's a respectful legacy. She did the work, she made her mark, and she moved on. The fact that the internet tries to fill that silence with noise about bungalows and guards, that says a lot more about our consumption habits than it does about her. We want the celebrity to be a generic template. We're uncomfortable with the reality of the labor that goes into adult entertainment.
It really makes you wonder about digital legacy in general. As AI generates more and more of the web, are we going to lose these real human stories? Are we just trading the sweat and the risk of a person's actual life for a safe fiction?
I think we're already doing it, and that's why we have to dig past that first click. If you stop at the wiki page, you're consuming a hallucination. You have to go to the archives to find the actual human being.
Halli Aston wasn't an Instagram star from Phoenix. She was a gymnast from Fountain Valley who navigated one of the toughest industries in the world during a very chaotic time. And that is a story worth getting right.
Absolutely.
And that's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for exploring the archives with us.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one.